Reality is the intuition and the imagination and the quiet voice inside my head that says, "Isn't that extraordinary?"
In my years of photography, I have learned that many things can be sensed, seen, shaped, or resolved in a realm of quiet.
Hey, welcome to the Street Shots Photography Podcast. This is Antonio.
And this is Ward.
And this is episode 202 for the end of February 2024. Wow, I didn't mess that up.
No, it's a lot of twos and zeros.
I know.
And fours.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I was like, because I'm like, don't say 22, don't say 23. And I was about to say, it's the leap year. So this will come out on a leap year day. So it's a once out of 4 year, show that we're doing.
Yeah.
It's a leap show.
A leap show.
A leap show.
Exactly.
It sounds like a German word. Leap show.
My little leap show. Yeah.
So how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Winter has arrived back in Calgary, so it's very cold.
Yeah.
Maybe the less we talk about that, the better.
Okay, we won't talk about that. And I won't talk about that it's going to be 60 degrees here in a day or so.
Sure, you go right ahead. We won't talk about
that.
Keep talking about that. That'd be great.
And if I keep talking about it, you're just going to send that smoke down here as soon as
You know what?
possible.
It's already started. It's already started.
So
the fire
sorry about
season has started north of me. Yeah.
Yeah, damn. Are you getting good sunrises or sunsets? I guess,
It hasn't really
come.
come down. It's just the number of fires is abnormally high. They're all, I imagine, they're all quite small. But who knows? They could have been smoldering from last year.
Fingers crossed that we don't, all of us don't have to have that same thing as last year. That was just terrible.
No. Yeah.
So what else have you been up to? Have you been paying attention to all the news these days? The new photography news?
New photography news. Fuji came out with a new X100 variant, which you could not escape. And now no one can get one again.
No one can. I pre-ordered one.
Did you?
I did. And once I got the announcement from B&H, it was immediately in the email, I just went and pre-ordered it. I figured it, whatever it would come up, and I'll just sell my. We'll see. I know the market for the X100F, the price will go down, but I don't care. I mean, anybody out there is interested in a pretty good condition X100F, I think I'll be getting rid of mine.
Cool. Well, I did sign up for when they become available.
When they become available.
So I'll make the decision of nope, can't afford it.
Yeah,
I'm really kind of hanging on for the XS20, which will be more use to me for sports.
Right,
XS20.
that one. Yeah,
the one that shot that model at the Fuji event here last or whenever it was earlier in the year. A
good camera. That's the one I'm recommending for people if they want to get involved, especially in video for Fuji stuff, because it's a good hybrid camera. Mm-hmm. It's got very good video.
It's just a good camera.
Well.
It's fun to use in the studio.
Yeah, and it's the same design as the other two, the XH2 and the XH2S.
XS10 and XS10 too. It's the same as the XS10.
Is it?
The unpainted control wheels.
Oh yeah. With the so you can design it
and has the PASM dial. And
yep.
It's designed to work.
Yeah. But, I'm flipping on my YouTube channels to watch, more fountain pen videos or whatever I'm getting. And all I can see is everybody and people who I've never heard of before have got this thing in their hands, the X100 VI or the X100 6. And, everybody's putting up a video saying this camera is making me a better photographer. And does it have everything it needs? And it's like, I just want to, it's enough already. I mean, how much can you talk about this camera? It's got a new sensor and it's got IBIS and okay. So what? That's it. I mean, I think everybody's making such a big deal of it because they couldn't get the 5. And anyway, it's a thing.
Well, I mean, if I had the 5, I don't know that I would buy this, sort of which one should I get if I never had one? Well, the used market's going to pick up again because people will be jettisoning their old X100s in favor of the new one if they can get a hold of one. You know, I always get the latest. 40 megapixels is a lot for me, though. I'm fine with the 24 or 26.
It is a lot, and there's the cropping stuff, but you know, that's the new sensor that you know. Here we are talking gear. Sorry, but it's the new sensor that Fuji's very proud of, and it's like, sure, throw it in there, big deal. I mean,
yeah, true enough.
It's, you know, I use that sensor on I have the X1. I got the, you know, XH2, which has got that sensor in it, and it's fine. I use it for bird photography. I like cropping into it because sometimes the birds are just a little too far away, even with my lenses, and it gets nice shots. And, you know, but again, it's like, it just doesn't seem warranted, all this hoopla over it. You know, yes, it's going to be a very, you know, people are going to be buying this camera left and right, and I'm like, so what? You know, and it's just, I couldn't escape the news. And maybe, you know, unfortunately, you watch one video on YouTube, and that's it. The algorithm's like, okay, he wants to watch every single video about the X100 VI. And, you know, what did I make a mistake at watch? Oh, I can't remember. What was I? I watched something. It's like, oh, that looks interesting. Not just something that popped up in the timeline. And like from now on, like I got, you know, 1,000 videos of whatever this is. I'm like, I don't want to watch this.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I put a pre-order in it because you know, for me, the X100 it has a nice history for me because I had the T and I still have it. And I think I burned it out. But when it comes to talking about like a symbiosis between a piece of equipment and like a vision, like that camera really, really did something for me. It definitely shifted something. And, you know, a lot of my street photography was with that, but it also had a little bit of a dream come true in a way, because growing up and seeing photographers with Leicas around their necks and the photo vests and, you know, looking really cool and stuff like that. And I was like, I've always liked rangefinder cameras as a kid. I don't know why, just because I associated it with being a photographer. And, you know, I never bought a Leica, and I don't think I'd ever will buy a Leica. You know, it's just too much.
Yeah.
But, you know, having, I think, you know, when I first got the X20, I think, right? Is that the
that's the one. Yeah, I went to.
And that had that look to it. It had that little bit of look. I was like, oh, I can see where this is going.
I imagine it was like a CL. You know, it was kind of the same.
Yeah.
Kind of.
But it had that look, you know. But it was too small. It was still a point and shoot. But when the X100, when I started hearing about the X100, like, yes, I was attracted to the way it looked, and there was this, you know, dormant part of me that was like remembering when I was young and I saw photographers walk around looking really cool with this thing. And so that certainly influenced some part of it. But, you know, after using it and it jived with, you know, I think we worked together to create, you know, a sort of a vision or an idea of my photography. So it helped me bring sort of out what I wanted to do.
Right.
And, you know, you have to give credit sometimes to equipment for, you know, sort of augmenting already what's sort of dormant in your, or in my creative psyche or something like that.
Yeah. Well, for me,
I don't know if it's making any sense here.
Yeah. So. No, but for me, it's the XXX. What is it? XE3 with the 23. So it's interchangeable lens, but essentially the same kind of deal as the X100, same field of view and so on. And so that was my really hitting the ground running first street. Then we were walking around New York. That's, you know, 90% of the work I was generating was for that combination.
But even just like also having a camera that, you know, is not intimidating, it's not heavy, it's not going to carry with you all the time. This is the thing I talk to students all about. You know, if you're gonna, you might have, and no disrespect for any large heavy duty DSLRs and whatnot, you know, because I certainly own a few of them. But if you're going to want to photograph every single day, schlepping some giant camera with you is not going to be what you want to do. And so having something small that's going to sort of pull you outside all the time and is not a burden. And I just tell students, if you want to get your photography better, you need to take pictures as many days of the week as possible, because that's how I did it. So, and any of these small cameras do this. But one of the things I loved about it is that this is the segue. Here we go. is that leaf shutter. That quiet, silent, or nearly silent leaf shutter. I mean, I show them the difference between students. I show, you can take a picture with this camera, ka-junk, right? Yeah. Or you can take a picture with this camera, and it's like, did you guys hear the shutter? And usually they don't hear the shutter. And so the silence of it, or the near silence of it, if you're using electronic shutter, is totally silent. But that near quietness is really that kind of putting yourself as a fly in the wall kind of photographer in a way. So I really like that. But you like the way I fed in the word silence.
It's silence. So we're talking about silence. So we're going to have 40 minutes silence, of dead air now?
Yep. Yeah, here we go.
And it's opposite today.
It's that's right. We're talking about silence in photography, right? Well, someone, what did I call this thing? Well, I have a good name for that. I'm not going to spoil the name of this. Well, no, I want to call the name Shh.
Oh, okay.
The show. Yeah.
So that's the name of our show. Okay.
That's the name of our show. Yeah. Be quiet. Silencio Bruno. Remember? Did you see that? What was it? It was a Pixar film with this kid in Italy, and he had this little voice in his head that kept telling him, not to do something, and he would just say "Silencio, Bruno." So for some reason,
silence, Bruno.
Cool. But I thought we could talk about the embracing the quiet in our creative process. How can we embrace quiet in our photography? And as I started to write notes down, I started to really give this some thought about what does that mean in what we do on a daily basis, photographically wise, and taking pictures and processing pictures and thinking about work. And I realized that I think you already have a hand in this, because I always found that you are looking at your own work, and when you say you're reflecting on your own work, I'm realizing that this is something that you're not doing while you're sitting on a bus going to work or something like that. That somehow you're situated in a place of quiet environment where you're able to then peacefully look at your work and reflect on it.
I don't know if it's so peaceful. It is. With my tendency towards attention deficit, it's an opportunity to concentrate, and silence, I think, is the best way for a human to concentrate. So whether it's editing or viewing or reviewing, which I do a lot of my own work.
Or reading as well.
Reading, yeah. The silence is definitely part of that. But it seems like, two different... two kind of disparate subject matter we're talking about here: the visual and the oral, whatever you want to call it, the sound part. And it's just interesting when you brought this up to me, like how, yes, I've got some interest in the subject matter, but the way we've put these notes together has made it a much larger topic than I could have imagined.
Yes. Yeah,
because it's in every aspect of photography. There's certainly for me, and now that I'm retooling the way I'm thinking about silence in photography.
Well, that's kind of what happens when we're doing these shows sometimes, is that we come up with a subject, and in a sense it could almost be a little bit of a rabbit hole to, it's silence in how we produce pictures, silence in the pictures themselves and the subject matter. I mean, there's like all of a sudden there's this ever growing kind of topic. And so, I don't think we can manage to be able to cover it all, but I would like to, the word silence in photography, how do we see that? And how does that come across in many different ways?
Well, I mean, let's start at the beginning, the creation of the image. So I've mentioned a couple of times on the show about when you and I were walking around Manhattan, and you're giving me a tour, which is awesome. Like, you're telling me, that I grew up over here, and like, this is a very important place for you. But I'm trying to shoot pictures.
And you're like, shut the up.
I love you, man, but I just can't concentrate. I got the Flatiron Building. It's got construction hoarding on it, but I'm trying to create something here. And my kind of, I don't know, just taking the verbal and the sound aspect out of my brain to take that and replace that with, the visual part, and the searching and clawing over the sidewalk and the buildings and the light, and just trying to focus, literally and figuratively, put my attention towards everything visual. And I want to push away anything. I mean, I appreciate the noise of the city, which is fine.
Yeah, it's a different noise. It's a
different thing. But the talking, the verbal, or another thing with one of the reasons why I'm kind of a poor art critic or photo critic is I just don't want to have to. What's the comedian say? You don't want to have to explain the joke to tell people how it works. You're ruining it. And I feel the same way about photography. I want there to be a nonverbal presentation of what's going on that has a nonverbal effect on the viewer. So that's the creation of the image anyway.
Yeah, well, as you're saying that, it occurred to me that, several times I've run photo walks, and that's always an interesting position to be in, because it's sort of like what I was doing with you in a way is, people want to be sort of guided and they want to take pictures. And so do I want to take pictures. And I realize pretty much every photo walk that I'm on, I haven't taken good pictures because I'm either too busy talking or listening. Or for some reason, for me, it's walking and chewing gum at the same time. It's like I can't do one or the other very well. And so I end up doing both not so well. If I do a photo walk, I think the last photo walk I did, I just brought my phone with me because I was not committed to it. So I spent more time sort of talking, but I realized there was
that's
no way
fine.
I can
If you're an
instructor
leading something, that's
but I go on these walks too and I want to take pictures as well. But it didn't occur to me until you said this before we went on that, that's interesting, because most of the time I'm photographing by myself and I don't have people talking to me, or I don't have anything, and being in the city is nice. I mean, the noise of the city doesn't, bother me. That kind of sound doesn't affect me. But once I get into shooting mode or photography mode, I don't want to hear things, and and again, we talked about this before about like sort of the walking meditation of photography and being present. And I was just talking about that on my talk last week at the cafe, bringing that up again as being mindful. Right. And so, yes, I didn't, for some reason, once this word hit our show notes and I was like, silence, how does that show up? And realizing, yes, I have that same thing. Like if I was you, I'd be exactly the same, exactly the same kind of thing, be like, yes, I want to shoot. And, great that you grew up here, but be quiet for a minute. I'm not saying that's what you're going to say to me, but you might've said that to me. But you know what I mean? It's like, and so I get that now, but that is one aspect of silence in photography, is this idea that it sometimes for me it's the two things don't work. Well, although again, it depends on the context.
Right.
I've been in like studio situations where of course you got to talk. If I'm doing
if you're chatting up a model or something, you got it, and that's fine, and that's part of the energy of capturing something. Yeah. That can be fun. But street photography, man, there's just so much. There's all these balls in the air that you gotta balance, and that instant, you want to capture that instant, and that's part of the fun of it for me, is the concentration. And the concentration. I think that's where for me, if I'm not paying attention, that's where things fail. So I like when I go on photo walks by myself, because it's one of the things that I do with my class. I tell them, my street photography class, again, I say, they think we're all going to go out on some big photo walk together. And I say, nope. I say, you guys are going to go out on your own. And guess what? I'm not coming with you. Yeah. And they're like, why? I'm like, because, if we walk as a group together,
everybody's going to take the same picture of the same fire hydrant. But I didn't even think about it, there's this other thing about being in a group where you're not going to, I said, you guys are going to go off on your own. You're going to come back. You're going to be solitary. You're going to figure stuff out. You're going to come back and you're going to share stuff with us. And then we can talk about it, but not during the shoot and stuff. So
that's cool.
Yeah. So as we were thinking about the subject, I flash back to the days that when I worked in a dark room in school, and you've said this before. For me, I love staying late in a dark room at night because there's nobody there.
10 p.m. to 3 a.m. Those are my golden hours in the dark room.
I never could stay that late for the school, but
okay. Well, I had my home dark room.
Well, you had your own, yeah. There was something about being in a big dark room in school because I had multiple enlargers, and you can go there. But when you went there late at night, nobody was there. There was someone in the cage who you had to bring the equipment back to, and you could hear the running water because you had the washing
rinse,
tank going, rinse, and there was nobody there. And maybe I'd have a little music on, or not, but just that being by myself and quiet, and then. I didn't remember that. I didn't remember how much silence was involved in that as well. Like I hated working in dark rooms with the whole class because it was just a real big mess. And I don't remember that being like a detriment to the work I was doing, but I do remember being in the dark room by myself and liking that a lot, And so, I was thinking about that now in terms of like what we're doing in post-production, in sitting on a computer. I'm sitting here today trying to do some post-production in Lightroom for a class that's coming up on Thursday. It's actually a class in processing, and sitting here in a quiet silence doing looking at my pictures, and made me think of you, by the way. This is where I thought about you, about looking at work and contemplating it and reflecting on it and thinking about that. And I was like, you know what, this is another, bit of a way to be introspective, quiet, paying attention. I'm like, I can't do this kind of stuff like while I'm in a coffee shop or anything. I have to do this in this environment. But I just wasn't aware of this until now. I don't know about you.
No, like I say, I haven't really thought about it much at all. It's just sort of like then just jumping back to the darkroom for a while. I have a connection to, Steely Dan and Paul Simon. I don't know if the Kodachrome song came on when you were in the darkroom. Oh my God, you were singing, right? So it's not all silence, but when you're on the grain magnifier and when you're, exposing, there's a kind of like, all right, nobody move, we're exposing. I don't want, because my enlarger was built on this plywood stand in the corner of this, wood paneling, bathroom in my.
So anybody who would walk by the room.
So that's another reason why I had to do everything at night. All my siblings are in bed and my parents have gone to bed. So, but there was that bzzz, those old, I've forgotten the name of the timer. It's like an egg timer. You twist it, to get your exposure time. There's a stay on it. You turn it to 14 seconds or whatever it is, and push the button and turns the safe light off and bzzz, exposes it and does all that fancy stuff. But you're silent. You're still for that, whatever that 14 seconds
holding
is.
your breath.
I think I am.
Did you ever do that?
My breath.
Yeah.
I think I did. And also too, if I had to do any dodging, so I would do dodging either with my hands, and then keep moving, and and then if I need to add 2 or 3 or 5 seconds for burning, then I would do that after. But those were definitely silent, like because I'm trying to dodge whatever.
I kind of missed that in a way, that there was that visceral reaction to like doing something, enlarging or something like that, like holding my breath because I was afraid to do. I can't remember, but that just feels very familiar. Like,
well, you didn't want to bump the easel, you didn't want to bump the enlarger, make it wiggle or whatever, and I didn't want any vibrations to come because it was a basement darkroom, so people were walking around upstairs, or if my siblings were running around, it might jiggle things a little bit. But yeah, no, I saw on a film somewhere or read about people using their hands to do the dodging, and I just took to that. I could make little funnel shape and do whatever, and have my fingers jut in. And do I want it closer so it's a sharper thing, or up closer to the lens so it's more amorphous? And it's like, though that stuff is done in silence. If there's music playing, I'm sure I would not have heard it. But the holding your breath, that's a thing I didn't even think of. I'm sure I was.
Yeah,
I'm sure it was.
Bated breath here. So how do you think silence plays a role in our creative process? Like, what would you say to that in general? I mean,
I think that's where most of the brain work happens, right? From shooting to selecting images. Mm-hmm. Is that, am I in the right territory here? Is that
I don't know. Maybe I'm bouncing off you. I mean, like, thinking that silence encourages observation, opens up the doors to intuition. That we talk about, like, if you go to I don't know, let's say a famous portrait photographer or somebody who's I don't know, if somehow I think a photojournalist is working silently, paying attention, observing. And
the street photographer dancing, those films of Joel Meyerowitz, he's stepping off the curb, stepping on the curb.
Well, what do you think of that? Do you think that's more of an overt thing or a silent thing? I mean,
I think it's a silent thing. His eyes are peeled, looking
dance
for the next subject. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even I'm thinking of Bruce Gilden. I mean, those arresting.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the pictures. You're talking about the straight up street shots with
shots of Bruce Gilden, yeah. And they're very.
You're talking about like the portraits, like
the portraits, the flash. He fires the flash in your face, and
yeah. Well, what are you thinking about that? Tell me.
Well, that instant of firing the flash, the whole thing is an instant of. Well, it's not just the 250th of a second. It's like an 8,000th of a second. It's like really a short period of time, completely lit, where you can see the light in people's eyes and the texture of their skin. And you have to say, with a Gilden picture, it's not always flattering. In fact, it usually isn't. He's doing kind of the opposite of what a studio tries to do.
Okay, so I put together a list of pictures. I was talking about like silent portraits, and Gilden is not one that pops up in my mind when I was going through the list. But like some of the let's talk about silent pictures, right? So let's sort of shift a little bit. But the ones that came to mind originally were McCurry's Afghan Girl and Dorothea Lange's Migrant Mother, right? Like if you look at those pictures, it's very quiet in the picture. Like the subject, if you were to put a word to one of those things, for some reason Gilden does not, for me, pop up as a quiet image.
No, that's true.
I mean, but it's not a shouty image, but for some reason it doesn't fall in those departments. Now the Steve McCurry and Lange's pictures, those are pretty obvious examples. But thinking about like Avedon's in the American West pictures, the subject against a white background, so there's no interference, there's no background interference. It's just the photographer.
Well, there's
and
the view camera. I'm here. You're posing. I'm getting ready. Like it's you could call it a staged image. It's a portrait image that's created specifically. And so that's a good point. And there is so much silence in those. Like as a viewer, those are the kinds of images that you pour over. You're looking at all the details because there's so much to see. Right. You're trying to figure out who this person is and all of that. Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah, and actually I was thinking when that popped up, immediately was thinking about his photograph of Marilyn Monroe, because that shot of her sitting there was a moment when she was sort of putting her guard down. She was not Marilyn Monroe, the star. She was Norma Jean, the person, and Avedon saw that And from the story that we read, I think was like how he just approached and took a shot of her. And I think the gist was that she probably knew what she was doing. She knew she had her guard down. But what I was imagining as I'm looking at that picture was the scene and how she's sitting quietly. Abaddon looks at her, sees what's going on, and then, sort of quietly moves up to her and takes these pictures, and she's aware of the pictures being taken, but she's not moving, and there's this silence between them, like a silent agreement of taking the picture. And to me, that photograph is an incredibly silent portrait, especially because of her expression and I guess of who she is as well.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, I have an idea that she was very tightly controlling the way she looked in front of a camera, because I think she was one of the masters of that. I compare that to Doug Kirkland's pictures of her under the sheet from a few years later. Those pictures don't evoke silence. I don't think.
Not at all. I was thinking most of the pictures of her don't, in general, just because of the way she is.
You can almost hear her voice in the images too.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Another one that popped in my head was American Gothic. Gordon Parks shot of this portrait of Ella Watson. She's a government cleaner, and she's standing there in front of an American flag with the broom.
Yep.
And how her face looking at the camera, and just the setting, what's going on. There's this sort of communication between her and us. When was it taken? In the 60s?
I think it was earlier.
There were 59s. I can't remember. I can't remember the dates, but the communications is going on between her and the viewer, and what's going on. They have this American flag. You've got her. She's got a broom upside down. There's all this the tension with race and class, and even just a person's dignity and whatnot. And
a black woman with the round spectacles, and older woman like staring right into the camera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I use that picture in one of my classes as also about composition, because I think it's a beautifully composed and a simply composed image, and how such a simply composed image can have such power. But it never really thought about the silence in this, the silent communication. Again, it's this communication that goes on, this what the viewer and the subject is saying. The Yosef Karsh picture of Churchill, right? And the story behind that picture, the famous picture of Churchill. If you don't know it, you should go and look it up. But the story is that Karsh pulled out the cigar from his hand, from Winston Churchill's hand, and then caught the picture. And if you look at Churchill, he looks completely pissed off, but he looks also very powerful, And I think it's that look that there's that, again, it's another kind of silent portrait. It's one of my favorite pictures. I love that picture. I have that book. I have his book, which I haven't read yet, somewhere. What's it called? I think Dave told me about it.
Karsh Portraits?
Yeah, something like that. Anyway. And of course, then thinking about this, I started to think about one of Duane Michals' series of pictures called Death Comes to an Old Lady.
So Duane Michals created these kind of, what would you call them? Collages, groupings of sequence of images?
I don't know if you could label them, but I mean, that's what he was doing, these sequences, and then writing on pictures.
Right.
Putting a lot of writing on it, which to me doesn't create a silence, because you're reading it as the viewer. But this one series of pictures I remember seeing when I was a kid, and I just remembered this while I was writing up the notes. Like, oh yeah, I saw this a very, very long time ago, and I remember I liked it. As Death Comes to an Old Lady, a sequence of 5 pictures of an old lady sitting on a chair next to a hallway, and this sort of male figure comes and approaches and taps her on the shoulder, and the last frame is her rising up, and it's a blurred image of her standing. And to me, I didn't realize how quiet that image was, or that it's hard to say image, that sequence of image. I don't even want to, like, what do you call those things?
I don't know. I would call them sequences, but that's maybe too cold.
So anyway, like, not to, I'm not busting chops, but like to put a Gildan in there, or even like a Gary Winogrand. Like, I don't think a Winogrand is or I think of a lot of street photos as not necessarily being quiet, but there are some quiet ones, but like Irving Penn portraits of the, when he brought his whole studio out into the, middle of Africa and set up an outdoor studio, and those pictures of the people that live there. So anyway, things like that. There's those silent images that when you look at it, it is probably one of the words, if you're going to have to describe the image in sentences, it's one of the words you would put is quiet or silence to it. So I don't know what else to say about that. I don't know if you've got something in that department.
No, I think you're right.
No? Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course I'm right.
Of course you're right. So, okay, so those are the images for the viewer, like the meaning of silence, or the presence of silence. And what?
Sorry, I did want to mention this. Our new brother in light, Keith Goldstein, in our Unusual collective, two projects that he's done that really made me think. The silence and urban photography. I was thinking of silence and urban photography, but recently he just came out with a book called Manhattan, which is a series of incredibly beautiful images of the buildings and scenes of Manhattan. And when we were talking about doing this idea, I was looking at those pictures and thinking, do those evoke silence? And I thought, yeah, they do. These giant, massive structures of New York City, these giant buildings that are like silent sentinels, if I can say that, are silent giants that are, and so there's a quietness to his picture. And we know how New York is so active and the energy is there, but when I see these pictures of these buildings and the way he presents them, that there's an incredible silence in that as well. And he also did a project, which I can't remember the name of, so if he's listening, forgive me, Keith, for forgetting, but after 9/11, he went down to Ground Zero and photographed the people who were looking at the empty space. Now, when I went down to Ground Zero a bunch of times to do some photography, the thing about that was how physically quiet it was there. Given the monumentalness of the event and what was going on and all the work that was going on. One time a friend and her daughter came to the city, and me and Elizabeth we actually went down near Ground Zero because they wanted to see it. And it was amazing how quiet it was there in general, just quiet. But Keith did these portraits of people who were staring up at nothing because there was nothing there anymore. And so it's all point of view of, I guess if you were from the World Trade Center looking at the people who are looking at nothing.
Right.
And
like the people watching the parade.
Yeah. And I was thinking about that in terms of this, like how a reverent silence that existed not only in reality, but in those pictures and in the people's expression. So anyway, I wanted to throw that in as a, to think about these kind of images or scenarios or situations where silence is predominant, is both part of the maybe in the making of it and what the picture is produced, what it looks like. So anyway, want to say
very cool.
Yeah.
So where was I? Oh, I was talking about the next step in the process of photography. So we've got the producing of it, the shooting, and the silence around that, and the effect on the viewer. And I'm thinking about the process part, and we talked a little bit about that already in the darkroom, about editing, going through and concentrating on all the images that you've shot and trying to, concentrate and make your image selections. And once you've got your selections, then go through and edit them. And, it's funny that the way I think about editing is I look at an image and there's a question, but it's more of a nonverbal question, is what is the biggest thing that I need to do to make this closer to my original vision when I shot it, and deal with that, tweak the thing in the, in the controls in Lightroom. Okay, good. Stop right there. What's the next thing? Tweak that. And those decisions are all visual decisions. Yes, I'm turning knobs and spinning and moving sliders and so on. But the result is all visual. And so there's no words associated with that other than maybe reading what the control is. That for me is definitely silent. That's a silent part of the whole thing.
Yeah,
and part of it is an extension of the concentration you had in the creation of the image at the camera, and now there's the disconnect of time, and now you're back at that image taken from where it was picked up by the camera, and now we're moving it on down the creative journey again in silence.
Yeah, I think about that also when I speak to my students I kind of diss on Instagram, and I tell them I'm not dissing on Instagram, but you know what I am I'm really putting it down. But if I was going to think about that in sort of the terms that you're talking about, like looking at imagery in that way, scanning it every couple of seconds, and I don't mean this literally, but it's like it's a noisy way to be observing and taking in imagery. And so when you're talking about sitting down and looking at your images slowly, scrolling through them, or spending a little bit of time tweaking the settings for processing, like I'm having such a hard time imagining doing that same thing on a phone in a crowded something or other, rushing to get the picture. Like it's like a night and day difference for how to experience dealing with your own work. And it would be really interesting that I wonder if someone who's so used to doing that could actually sit tight in a chair in front of Lightroom for 10 minutes trying to eke the best out of one of their images, or are they just so used to this sort of a noisy environment, meaning not literally, but like a fast paced kind of like a filter put this, and then
stimulating,
stimulating, yes, maybe overstimulation. And what are the differences from those? What are you losing? I mean, certainly when we're doing it the way you're talking about it, you're in a sense, quote unquote, losing time, right? Because you're taking a long time. I mean, it takes, from what you've mentioned here, often how long it's taking you to look at and process pictures that you've photographed, multiple years ago. Even at this point, we still have stuff from New York or whatever. I mean, you're not immediately rushing to get those out. And the flip side of that coin is someone's taking a picture and immediately uploading it onto their phone and then processing it in Snapseed and then sending it out the door in a rushed, expedient way.
Just expedient way. Yeah.
Yeah. And whereas someone like you, I'm just using an example, could do it that way, right? You understand the context of like, okay, well, I took a shot on my phone and I'm going to process it Snapseed and I'm going to get it up to Instagram and you can do that. I wonder if it would work the other way around. Could someone who's so used to a noisy, fast paced kind of thing could sit there for 10 minutes or 15 minutes trying to contemplate how to process one of their pictures? Yeah, I don't know. I open that up. I just have a hard time imagining it. I mean, I think just like today's films are so, think about the difference in films, right? Here's a great example of silence. I think, can you imagine an audience from today sitting through Lawrence of Arabia, right? And watching watching that without, fidgeting or whatnot. And again, no, I know I'm in this old person, young person kind of thing, but the media has changed to the point where everything is much faster, more electric, if I would say that. And, like watching this scene from, again, Lawrence of Arabia, where they actually do a real time sunrise, like sun rises in real time on film. And, there's no jump cuts or anything like that. No. So anyway,
Omar Sharif is coming on the camel, and we watched that. That's a 3-minute sequence.
We watched that for minutes. And to me, that's an incredibly quiet film, even though there are parts that are noisy and violent and whatnot. But I think if I was to sort of summarize the entire film, I think it would be sort of a quiet movie, a quiet rendition of that period of history and that story. So it's interesting to think about this idea of silence and not silence, and not using silence as a literal thing, but excuse me. This ability to slow down. I think this is why, for me, like right now, journaling and doing the photo journals and even just regular journaling and writing and going back to getting into this thing with the fountain pens that I really like, it is also to quiet my mind down a lot. And I'm noticing, I think that's what I'm finding very addictive to this, is the quieting down, because in a sense I have to be quiet when I'm writing, because I can't, like, I tried listening to the radio while I was writing. I'm like, no, that doesn't work. Like sometimes I'll sit there and I'll like 5 o'clock, I'll fire the news on and I say, maybe I'll write it into my journal or something like that. And I'm like, that ain't happening. There's none of that. I can't, it's two different parts of my brain. But even because I'm writing in cursive, I have to do that slowly, because I have to figure out how to spell the word, which I'm actually quite pleased with myself, as a side note, that my spelling is pretty good.
Good.
It is weird, but you have to sit there and you have to figure out like all the loops and stuff like that so that you can create the right letters. And so there's a lot of deliberate slowness to that. I don't write cursive very fast, but I realize, I think that's what's going on, is to be able to quiet my mind down. And not that my mind was very jumbled anyway, but this is definitely helping. And so I just wondered about that, like especially doing the photo journal. The photo journal to me is a great way to quiet down the thoughts of whatever my thoughts are. So anyway, I thought I'd throw that into the mix too. It's, again, and you and I are tackling the journaling differently, which I think is cool. But it is something that I've been really trying to tell more people about. Like I bring my journals into show students and say, look, spend some time looking at 1 or 2 pictures, stick them in a book, write slowly, think about them, spend time with them, come back to them. But I think all the underlying tone to this is quiet, is be quiet a little bit, And I think when I say slow down, is be, what is it? Mind like
quiet your mind, yeah.
Quiet your mind. Oh shoot.
Oh, sorry. Did I take you off the rails?
No. I can't think of it. It was like a, darn it, like a mind like water or something like that. I don't know. Just keeping that quiet. So anyway, I thought I don't know. Do you have anything more to say on this, or have we milked it out?
I think we're pretty close to saying what we wanted to say about it. Just, whatever it means for our listeners, what silence means in terms of your creative process, make room for it, because I think it's important. Set aside the time to do your editing in silence, in quiet. When you're shooting, maybe it's never occurred to you. You go out and you're all very chatty, I'm going to look at this and look at that. What if you just settle down a little bit and stay quiet and see if you see anything more on the street or in your studio, wherever you are.
Yeah. I agree with that. And I think also just seeing how often silence appears in what we do, sort of even on an everyday level, right? Not just our photography. How do we incorporate silence into our lives? Because I think we can't separate our photography from our lives, right? And so how do you, and again, this is not about necessarily about meditation or, I hate the phrase woo woo, but like none of that, it's not necessarily that. I think we have this need to quiet our minds down in order to make ourselves more present for a lot of things, photography being one of them.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're present with something, the world has a sort of a different flavor, I think. And and silence is part of that, and whatever that means, whether it's in whether it's in how you photograph, whether it's the pictures that you're taking. We've been talking a little bit about liminal spaces and images of that, and to me, automatically that means it's like a quiet space. Even just making those kind of pictures and looking at them,
Mm-hmm.
there's a silence between the photographer and the viewer and the subject. But keep this idea of silence as a concept with you as you're walking around and doing stuff, no matter what it is. So I it's something I want to spend more time really paying attention to, and it's really interesting to think about it as silent images, silent portraits, silence when you're processing, silence, and not necessarily you having to be a monk, but just this concept of silence in photography is, and I'm sure it's with other things as well. It's not just photography. I think it could be with multiple different, whatever your discipline is. So anyway, it was something that popped up and I thought seemed like it was worth talking about. So, cool. And until we come up with some new idea, and we should do one on loud.
Well, then I'll bring Gildan back. Then
you can bring Gildan. Well, actually, to go back? Why did you bring Gildan up for?
Because of the short, because of a short period of time from the strobe.
Okay,
it is a fraction, like a very, very short period of time where you've taken this person's busy life and just taken like the narrowest curtain shutter aspect of their existence. Now the images are, I would agree, they're not silent. They're not silent in the in the literal sense. But there's such a short, something about the strobe, or the fact that I know that it's a strobe that he's firing, just gives you that intense sliver where there's no time for sound or whatever. It's just like a punch.
Yeah, I'm going to give that to you. Actually, as I'm thinking about it again, because I'm really, I don't have
different.
a specific.
It's not a silent image. It's not a contemplative.
Right.
It is. It's more of a gut punch, but it's an instant. It's just such a sliver.
It's such a sliver. It's a fraction of time that you almost can't hear it. I mean that. I keep going back to being literal here. I don't want to do that, but there's something about that I'm getting, and I'm picturing those pictures. I can't remember anything specific, but some of those portraits that he shot in Los Angeles with those straight on flashes of people, they're quite incredible. And I think I get what you're saying about it.
It's just a different kind of silence. It's a silence based on time, not necessarily on composition. Like I say, those images tend to be gut punches, right? So, but that tends to take.
So there could be a lot of gut punches in any kind of what we might think is a quiet image can certainly have a gut punch to it. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're mutually exclusive.
But in terms of like the portrait form, they're striking. There's no doubt about it.
And there's really nothing between you and the subject. You as a viewer, it's in your face and literally.
And you're looking over all the detail in the same way you'd be looking over an Avedon picture in some ways, but your state of mind is completely different because of the nature of the images that he creates.
I mean, I'm imagining seeing those in a gallery, or a museum, and whatever size they would be printing it. And I was imagining the experience of standing in front of one of those and having
you think
some.
you could be silent? That's like when you're standing in a gallery. That's one thing we haven't talked about. Standing in a gallery, viewing these images. Like when I went through the Diane Arbus this last year, I was not quiet. There were exclamations and
really,
like well, the emotional or mental impact of the images is like, God, life must have been hard for these guys, or you are expressing yourself verbally as you're viewing them. You don't get that, like your liminal images or certain beautiful sunsets and all that kind of stuff. Well, that you might have an exclamation from one of those too, but they're with a Gildan picture, if they're reproduced large, I mean, you're probably gonna make some noise when you're looking at them. You're like, wow, okay, there's
that's true. I was just thinking about when you were here in town, we were going to the Becher exhibit, and I'm trying to think what kind of experience were we having there? And even though their pictures are quite quiet in a way, in many respects, there's no people in their pictures, often multiple views of the structures, big prints. But I kind of remember when we were going through the galleries, we were very, I think we were, I don't know.
Well, we were trying to make a recording at the same time.
Well, we were doing that too. Yeah.
I felt like I had to speak sometimes, which a lot of the time we didn't, because there's the Becher exhibit was interesting for a couple of reasons. One was the overwhelming nature of the type of subject matter. And I was mostly prepared for it, but I actually wasn't. Once I got to see the volume of images and trying to, I'm in the big city and I'm trying to take it all in, right? And that was the only time I think on the whole trip where it really felt like a kind of a tourist. Like, I'm not going to be able to take this all in. Thankfully, there's a book now. I can go through it anytime I want, but it's not the same as standing under the prints that are on the wall. No, but it was trying to absorb not individual images and the scale of what that exhibit was doing.
Yeah.
Brain was in a couple of places at once. Yeah.
Good example. I was thinking when I went to the, back to Avedon, and there were the giant panoramic portraits that he had of the Chicago 7 and Andy Warhol and the guys who the architects of the Vietnam War, and they were really powerful because they were so large and the subject matter. But there was not. If I was going to think about seeing there again, there was not a lot of silence in my head about, like, there was a lot of thinking and dialogue. Like, who are these people? What's going on? Oh, this is that guy. There was just a lot of that going on for me. And I don't know what that says about the images and, how different they are from the stuff that he did in the American West, which were individuals, essentially photographed in the same way, against white. But these were groups of people. Well, they had an interaction
with each other in the frame.
Yeah, too, and presented monumentally too, larger than life. I mean, these things were gigantic and spanned the entire walls. And I feel that they would be different than seeing the shots of, say, the American West or even the Marilyn Monroe shot. And so they speak differently to me. So I don't know if they have that same power of being a sort of like a silent portrait or something like that. But anyway, it's interesting when that happens with the same photographer, it's not a photographer can produce an image that is both, or images that are silent or that provoke a lot of internal dialogue,
Yeah. And well, I think of ourselves too. Like I think of you and your light painting experiments you're doing a few years ago, right? Like, the goat skull and.
Well, that's funny you mentioned those. I was just looking at those today.
They have that soft studio-y. They definitely have a silent look to them because they're so arresting and I think calming. Unless skeletons and skulls, creep you out. They don't with me, but it's just,
That's interesting.
Those kinds of images that people take pictures of. I've got a picture of 3 pears on a wooden table, and there's kind of muted color.
Mm-hmm.
Just these things kind of different from the other work that we do.
Yeah.
That is definitely evokes a silence.
Actually, as you're mentioning that, it just reminded me of a photograph I found on a Facebook group. It just popped up in my timeline, and I can't remember the photographer's name, so forgive me if they're listening, but I can't remember it. I don't want to look it up now. Oh, wait. Hey, I got it right. I got it right here. I just realized I had my I think I've got it here.
You got it in your journal?
My journal here. I think I've got it. Oh, shoot. I probably don't. I probably have it in my other journal. This is my new journal. Darn it. Yeah, I don't have it in this one. It's my other one. Anyway, it's a great simple image of a chair, like a wooden chair, sort of leaning against a table. All right, so it's a slatted chair, and then on the table is a pear, or what looks like a pear, that's shaped in a way that it's sort of like a cornucopia. It's sort of shaped curved, and the stem is looking at the chair, and the chair, by its leaning on the table, looks like it's looking at the pear. And it's just a single light, it's like a very simple kitchen. There's nothing else in the picture. It's the table, the chair, the light, and the pear, and that's it. And there's this silent discussion going on between the pear and the chair. I think it's a pear. And anyway, I don't know why that popped up. Just as we were talking about this, it just made me think about this discussion that's going on, this quiet, and it's a very quiet image. I can't stop looking at it. When I see it, I'm so attracted to this picture, and it's such a simple shot. And I think it's also, I'm attracted to it because of the quietness in the picture, in what it's, even though there's a dialogue going on, but it's a silent dialogue. Anyway, I'll see if I can find that picture and give some credit to the photographer. It was just, I loved it. And I wrote about, I just love that kind of simple stuff. So anyway, yeah. All right. That was
cool.
That's good enough for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
there's nothing left but silence now. So.
Nothing but less silence, but I would like to throw this out to the what does silence mean to you guys who are listening? What does that mean in your photography, or how you make pictures, or your pictures, the pictures that you make? How does silence fit into your creative photography endeavors? So be curious to hear about that from people, and if everybody's thought about that before. I don't think we're the first people to think about it, but it's an interesting it's an interesting concept to dwell on a little bit. So it'd be great to hear from people about that. So there.
Cool. Yes.
All right.
It was a surprise to me, so it's very cool.
Yeah, it was a surprise. And I think I want to write something about this. This feels like I need to do something with it. I'm excited about it because I never really thought about it so much. So
very cool.
Anyway, all right. Well, all right, let's wrap up. Where are you in the worlds?
You can find me on Vero and Twitter at WRosinPhoto. On Instagram, you can find me at Ward Rosin Fine Art. Facebook, I'm at Ward Rosin Photo. And my website is rosin.ca, rosin.ca. Not much there, but it's there, and there's a contact page, or you can look at some of my stuff there. And our unofficial sponsor for the show is Ornis Photo. That's this little business I have, selling lens adapters and filters and stuff like that for Fuji and Sony cameras, and that's it.
You still sell lenses there, right?
Yeah, the Asian sourced lenses, 7 Sans. I've got quite a few, and it's funny. I got a couple of sales just in the last few days, which is great. Thank you for your support. And what about you, my friend? Where can we find you?
Yeah, Vero and Flickr is at AM Rosario. Instagram is AM Rosario Photo, which I haven't put stuff up lately, but I'll do some soon. My website is amrosario.com. It's AM Rosario everywhere for most places. Our website is streetshots.photography, and Subscribe to our Substack newsletter. I'll probably write something about silence coming up. So streetshots.substack.com. And, a few people have bought us coffee, so I really appreciate that. So if you want to buy us a coffee, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Antonio Rosario.
Cool. And I want to thank people for reaching out to me as well on social media. That's great. Want to hear from you. Don't be shy.
And don't leave me out. I'd like to hear from you too. What does everybody have? They're all coming because you're so handsome, right?
Oh, yeah, right.
It's the beard, man. It's the beard.
It's the beard. The Santa beard.
The Santa beard. It's not quite a Santa beard.
No.
You're more like a Hemingway beard.
Okay, I'll take that.
All right, take that.
There's a Karsh picture of Hemingway in his big sweater with his beard.
There seems like a Photoshop thing for me to do. Put your head onto Karsh's picture. All right, I won't do that. All right, man. Thanks for joining me tonight. And it was
as usual, my pleasure.
Yeah, and everybody have a good leap year day, and see you on the see you on the Ides of March, roughly. All right.
Yeah. Or exactly.
Right. Exactly. All right. Take care, everybody. Bye.
All right. Good night.
That Duane Michals, Death Comes to an Old Lady. I remember seeing that someplace.
You actually saw the work, probably.
Yeah. I saw a lot of Duane Michals stuff when I was a kid somewhere. It must have been at the Modern or something.
Okay.
Because it wasn't. I didn't get introduced to that in college. I mean, his stuff I always liked it, especially when it was sequenced because it made me think of a film in some way.
Well, Death Comes to the Old Lady, and what's the other one? The guys passing in the hallway. I forget what that one is called.
I don't remember that one. Yeah.
But
let me get you in.
They disturbed me. Him and Leslie Crims bothered me just because of my age. I wasn't ready for that. For the subject matter.
Oh, really?
I was 11, right? So I didn't get the blurriness of it or necessarily the symbol. I guess with Death Comes to the Old Lady, I got the symbolism part, but I was too young to include them in the greater canon of photography, I think. It's all right. I'm over it now.
I hope so.
I'm talking about the reactions of an 11-year-old, which